When Wolverine faces Magneto, he almost has no chance of winning. In JoJo, Gyro Zeppeli faces a similar nightmare. The enemy can control iron, making his steel ball rotation completely useless. Does this fight still hold any chance of turning around? The enemy drew closer and closer. Gyro once again pulled out a steel ball, then hurled it high into the air. The enemy laughed and said, "No matter what you do, it's useless. That steel ball could never get near my body." The words had barely left his mouth when the ball crashed to the ground. Gyro smirked confidently. Control iron? Can you control stone as well? Powered by the spin, shards of rock shot out like bullets toward his foe. The enemy's stomach was instantly pierced through. Taking the chance, Gyro immediately called Johnny to run. Two of the enemy's allies still hadn't acted, and their abilities were unknown. The best choice was to flee at once. As the distance widened, the iron fragments stuck in Gyro's leg began to fall off one by one. From this, he deduced their ability had a limited range. His son wounded and his prey escaping, Benjamin pulled out his pistol and fired wildly, but Gyro and Johnny were already far beyond its range. Looking at his gravely injured son, Benjamin suddenly had an idea. He shifted his aim and fired straight into the hole in his son's stomach. The bullet flew over Johnny's head, slinging blood onto him. Gyro had been hit in the leg because he'd kicked a blood-stained dagger. Now, with Johnny's blood, next time they could target him too. For this, Andre burst into tears. "If your bullet had gone off just a little, it could have killed me instead." But his father snapped back. "That's nothing. Back when I fell off a cliff, I smashed my whole jaw clean off and still walked 5 kilometers home. As long as we take them out, the three of us can be the first to reach the water point. Once we replenish, we'll destroy the source. Every racer behind us will die of thirst in the desert. By then, the championship will be ours." Hearing this, the younger brother asked, "But they're running so fast. How are we supposed to catch up?" Benjamin rolled his eyes. "Who said we'd chase them ourselves? We'll let the ones behind handle it." Benjamin had long noticed Mountain Tim's presence. That guy had been tracking their hoofprints the whole day. As long as they used their iron controlling ability well, they could make use of Mountain Tim. Saying that, Benjamin stuffed iron into his face. His entire face began to twist and contort. After some adjustment, his features actually transformed into Johnny. To uncover the killer of the first stage, Mountain Tim rode day and night, tracking the hoofprints relentlessly. As the sun set, he could only light an oil lamp to keep going. But as he followed the trail, the hoofprints with the missing piece suddenly veered into the trees and vanished. Inside that thicket, a man was crouching. Tim blew out the lamp, then shouted loudly, ordering the man to raise his hands and step out. On suspicion of murder, he was placing him under arrest. If he resisted, Tim would execute him on the spot. Hearing this, the man in the brush raised his hands, slowly turning around. It was Johnny. Before Tim could say a word, Johnny grabbed a horseshoe and hurled it. Tim blocked with his rope, but Johnny used that moment to dart into the woods. Trying to run, Tim instantly flicked his rope. The lasso landed squarely around the man's head. In these thorny bushes, if he pulled too hard, it would tear the man's flesh. Tightening the knot, Tim said coldly, "Are you climbing out yourself? Or do I drag you out with the thorns still stuck in you?" But the fake Johnny would never surrender. He drew a dagger, ready to cut the rope. Yet before the blade fell, another hand gripped his wrist. Looking closely, that hand had stretched out from the rope itself. Tim's hand holding the rope had already split into several pieces, and the fist had traveled through the rope to the other side. Before the imposter could react, Tim's other fist smashed into his face. The iron plates hidden under his skin shifted from the blow. What kind of ability is this? Could it be Tim too had once gone to the mountain where the meteor fell and been cursed? If this dragged on, his disguise would be exposed. With his wrist caught tight, the man transformed the iron plates in his cheek into a blade, sliced through the rope, and leapt onto his horse to escape. Though the criminal slipped away, Tim had at least seen his true face. And so, Johnny was branded the murderer, becoming Mountain Tim's target for capture. Later, the imposter regrouped with his two sons. Benjamin reverted his face to its true form. When he had thrown the horseshoe earlier, he had stained Tim with his son's blood. Now, all he needed to do was quietly follow behind. The moment Johnny and Gyro crossed paths with him, he would unleash his stand ability, turning the three of them into human magnets, tearing their organs apart from within. Johnny was framed and became the murderer hunted down by Mountain Tim. But Johnny and Gyro, at this moment, were still completely unaware. On their journey forward, suddenly, someone came chasing from the distance. The The night was too dark, they couldn't make out who it was. The two could only speed up, trying to shake off the pursuer. But no matter how much they sped up, the man chased relentlessly. 3 whole hours passed, yet he showed no signs of giving up. As he drew closer and closer, Johnny pulled out his telescope for a look. The one chasing them wasn't the Boom Boom family. That strange hat, that cowboy-like outfit, it was Mountain Tim, the one who had finished 4th in the first stage. But why was he chasing them? Though they didn't know the reason. Anyone chasing this recklessly at night, surely trouble. So they just kept running. At that, the two whipped their horses once more, pushing their speed to the limit. But unexpectedly, the distance between them and Mountain Tim grew even shorter. This man was just too fast. It didn't make sense. Before Johnny could figure out why, the iron parts of his saddles and gear suddenly flew off, all sucked onto him. The same thing happened to Gyro. Once again, they had turned into human magnets. Not only that, their bodies began drifting uncontrollably toward Mountain Tim. Meanwhile, the Boom Boom trio were hiding behind a hill in the distance, silently watching. Johnny, Gyro, and Mountain Tim, all 3 had fallen into their trap. As soon as the 3 of them drew close, the magnetic force would multiply and stack. Just one step closer, and without lifting a finger, the Boom Booms could wipe out 3 powerful enemies at once. Johnny and Gyro quickly realized the situation. The skin on Johnny's arm was already cracking and bleeding. It was the iron in his blood suddenly gathering together. If the 3 of them really collided, their fate would be the same as those 3 who had died before. Their organs would rupture and explode. The only urgent thing now was to warn Mountain Tim, tell him not to come any closer. But in the howling wind, no matter how they shouted, Mountain Tim couldn't hear a thing. Mountain Tim himself was puzzled. Why had those two suddenly dismounted? While running, Johnny panicked completely. By the time Mountain Tim got close enough to understand the situation, their lives would already be over. But Gyro stayed calm. He simply said, "So all we need to do is make him get off his horse, right?" Johnny shouted, "It's useless. The steel ball would just get sucked back to us." Resting his chin on one hand, Gyro snapped, "What the hell are you panicking for? Of course, I know that. The ball will indeed get pulled back, but all I need to do is calculate its return path." The moment he finished speaking, the steel ball flew back and struck a nearby boulder. The rock contained iron ore, and the fragments burst out like bullets, flying straight toward Mountain Tim. It worked. At last, they had successfully stopped him in his tracks.